Hi there everyone, how are we doing? Welcome to this very special, first of its kind, 67 Hail Hail viewers, questions and answers. Now, the reason we're doing this now is that I have earned a little bit of time off. In fact, as you're watching this video, I am probably sitting in a sound lounger somewhere in Dubai sipping a cold beer, because apparently you're allowed to do that nowadays. No, in all honesty, I'm taking a week off. The fact Celtic don't have a game this weekend means that I'm able to do that. I'm able to take a full week off from basically Thursday all the way through to the Hamilton game next weekend. So I'm going to give you some of these question and answers. We've had around 50 questions sent in by you guys and girls. Not going to be able to get through all of them. I've picked out the best ones. Disclaimer, I have left out most of the ones that surround Neil Lennon's future. A couple of reasons for that. I think I've covered it massively in the channel over the last few weeks. And the other reason, the more pertinent, important reason to me, if Neil Lennon does somehow get sacked in the coming days while I'm off, I really don't want to have to jump back to work from my sun lounger in Dubai and re-edit all these videos so they make sense. So just be wary of that for these videos. I think we're going to have 3 of these question answer videos. Be wary that some of the stuff may not quite be as current as it would normally be, but just bear with us. We will still have a couple of videos going out from Jackie McNamara that are very current on current issues, and we won't miss any post-match live reactions to Celtic games. We'll be back next week for our next match against Hamilton. So yeah, that's pretty much all I need to say. Let's get into these questions and answers. Why is it now the 20th of January and we are nowhere near signing a replacement central defender for Big Julian when we know he is going to be out for months? Also, what is the problem with wee Dembele? He never even got off the bench against Livingston. Right, on your first point with regards to the transfer activity, and I should point out that the couple of videos I just preempted there with Jackie McNamara, funnily enough, will be absolutely perfect for you, because we covered one video, the youth issue we have with players leaving the club, and also the lack of transfer activity. So keep an eye out for them. But in the meantime, I'll answer them, just my thoughts on them. In terms of the centre-back, I am very surprised we haven't signed a player this month. I think Lennon was quoted earlier, or maybe at the end of December after the news of Julian's long-term injury became clear, that we needed a centre-back in. I'm surprised that we haven't done the business. Other than the chat about Benkovic and a wee bit in Mark McKenzie, there hasn't really been anything at all. So I don't think we are going to sign a centre-back this month. Now, I can't have it both ways with this, because I've been calling out for Stephen Welsh to get more game time, and the fact that we haven't signed a defender who would probably have been a loan, a stopgap for 6 months, can only be a good thing for Stephen Welsh's development. Hopefully it means he's going to get more time, but also with, in my opinion, the league, far gone, is there really any benefit of signing another player like Shane Duffy rather than having Stephen Welsh? It's been a disaster, the defensive front this season. It's going to continue to be a disaster, I think, with Julian, probably our best defender, second best maybe, been missing for so long, and I are likely to leave in the summer. But I think we need to try and blood Stephen Welsh into the action. With regards to your second point on Karamoko Dembele, I thought it was really telling that he played, I think, 12 minutes combined in the 2 games against Hibs and Livingston when we missed, all those players. He clearly isn't in Neil Lennon's plans. I don't know quite what's gone wrong there from a couple of years ago when Dembele was making steady progress. And even at the start of this season, I think Dembele was included in a matchday squad, maybe even got some minutes in a game at the start of the season. I seem to recall him scoring in a pre-season friendly. I think it was Hibs or Ross County, one of those ones at Celtic Park. It all looked good at that stage. Obviously hasn't worked out. I don't know if he's been making too many demands. That's some of the stuff I've heard, nothing concrete, but that Dembele was wanting more game time. I personally don't think he's ready for it at all. Just from the fleeting glimpses we've seen of him, he looks tiny. I mean, look at this picture, how small he looks in comparison to the other Celtic players. So sadly, I think it's one that isn't going to work out. Will that be a bad mistake? Only time will tell. With Peter Lawwell having an obvious influence over the past 20 years on transfers, going over the head of managers and coaches, what structure would you like to see at the club on the football side? A director of football, perhaps? Right, rather than just hearing from me on these videos, we're going to bring in the other 67 Hail Hail contributors as well. First up with this answer, here is Ewan.
So, in response to Lee Stewart's question, should Celtic bring in a director of football? Absolutely, I think they should. I think John Park would have been perfect. He's just moved to Legia Warsaw, where he's going to be head of international recruitment for the Polish side, and he identified the likes of Virgil van Dijk, Victor Wanyama, a bunch of others. Obviously, there were some duds in there, but that's going to happen. So yeah, I think we should do it. And I think the longer that Celtic put off, the longer it'll take for that approach to bear fruit. If you look at the likes of our European competitors, so the Red Bull teams, specifically Salzburg actually, they use a director of football. Lille have got Luis Campos, who has brought in incredible talents for pretty nominal fees before moving them on for a great profit. So I think there's that aspect of it, but I wouldn't expect fireworks straight away. I think you need to take time to identify the right kind of person, and they would need more than a couple of transfer windows to get it right. So don't expect immediate fireworks if Celtic do end up appointing a director of football, but I think in the long term it would really benefit the club.
Right, I like what Ewan had to say there with regards to Red Bull, Salzburg, and to a lesser extent Lille. The reason I say lesser extent is because they come from one of the so-called major leagues, but I think a team like Salzburg is the kind of team Celtic should be modelling themselves on, because they've had enormous success in Europe. They dominate their country, completely. And I think in general the quality of football in Austria is probably a bit better than Scotland. I'm going to say a really controversial thing here, and I'm going to get loads of people unsubscribing probably. I actually think we need to take a bit of a look across the city and see what they've done with their recruitment over the last few years. I think almost every player Rangers sign goes on to make some sort of impact, or at least you can see the plan of getting them into the team. Leon Balogun, Kemar Roof's an obvious one. Even players like the boy, the striker they signed, that name has completely escaped me, that scored at the weekend. Itten, his name is. He hasn't made as much of an impact, but you can still see something in comparison to, an Ayeti or a Klimala, who have really done precious little for Celtic. So I think the upshot is that yes, director of football is a great idea, and I'm actually not against it. I'm actually probably for it. I don't think that it has to be quite as massive a sea change as that. I think quite simply Peter Lawwell has to cede responsibility in the football department. He is a businessman, he is not a football man, and I think he needs to cede that responsibility to football men. Now, whether that is just an all-encompassing football manager like Brendan Rodgers, who had far more control over things than had probably been the case at Celtic for a decade, probably since Martin O'Neill or Gordon Strachan left at first, then that's fine. If it has to be a director of football, as I say, I'm not against that as well. You can also have, football operations people and stuff like that. I think Nick Hammond's in that kind of funny role. When he was first appointed at Celtic, some people were suggesting he was a director of football. Obviously, that's not been the case. But I think that's the key. Peter Lawwell has made good decisions for Celtic financially, but bad football decisions. And I think we've seen that in our European run over the years. So I would like to see someone else come in and be given greater responsibility for the football decisions at Celtic. Where's the best place to sit or stand at Celtic Park? Right, Thomas, love these kind of questions. My season ticket I had for, I think, 10 or 11 seasons was in the lower tier of the North Stand, about the halfway line. Just a brilliant view of the pitch. Last couple of years, I've been basically all over the stadium. Main stand, I'm never a massive fan of. I always just feel a wee bit away from the action in the main stand. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that. Apologies if you are a season ticket holder in the main stand, although you've probably not been in the main stand for a long time, so hopefully you take a little bit less offence. I always get these ones mixed up. So the Jock Stein stand I've been in a few times, not got great memories there, mainly because Celtic lost 5-0 at home to PSG. Lisbon Lions stand is the one I'm going to go for. I've been in the standing section a few times, but I'm actually going to go for the section next to the standing section where my pal Lewis has a season ticket. I've been with him a lot of times to that area of the ground. The atmosphere is brilliant in there, but you also get a good view of the game. The standing section, not quite as good a view of the game. So there's my answer, Thomas. It is obvious this season is over and it's now a rebuild job, moving on players, bringing in players and working with those still at the club. On the goalkeeping role, who should we be building this new structure around as number one? Thanks for the question, Graham. Over to you, David.
I do feel the time to start building for next season's now. I think we've now passed that period where the season was retrievable. I think that was back in October, November time when we chose not to act. I think now it's too late to save the title. But even for those who maybe have a small glimmer of hope that we can still catch Rangers, I still think the best bet is to rebuild now. I still think the best bet is to bring a positive atmosphere to the club and bring about a managerial change. With regards to the goalkeeping department, now, I know we've spent so much money on Barkas, and I get that. He's the club's investment. Celtic are desperate for him to be the number one. For me, I would stick with Connor Hazard. He has made some mistakes, especially in his aerial duels. He's losing a lot of balls in the air. I would put that down to nerves, I think. This is his big opportunity to be Celtic number one. I think you could do with sticking by him during those slight errors. And he's a goalkeeper, like Pat Bonner said, you could have for the next 5-10 years. He could be a bigger investment than Barkas for me, and he could reap a lot more rewards if you stick by Hazard than going with the Greek. So that is what I would stick with at the minute. But I can't see it happening. I think he'll continue to select Barkas. He'll continue to go with his investment. He'll continue to play the players he's spent a lot of money on. And Celtic will probably be worse off for it.
Interesting as always take from David. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I don't agree with it either. I think for me we've got plenty of time with Hazard. I think he's still only 22. I think we've got time for him to either become a Celtic star or not become a Celtic star. I don't think we need to make any rash decisions there. In terms of Barkas, I do think with the money we've spent, we still don't know whether he's any good or not. And I know a bit of that's down to the fact he's not made any amazing saves yet, really. But equally, I don't think he's had any absolutely awful howlers. There was, a few he should have saved, and maybe that's the problem with Barkas. But I think the jury is still firmly out with him, and I think between now and the end of the season, we need to find out whether this guy is any good. And I think we need to do that by giving him an extended run in the team in front of a settled backline, because for me, he hasn't had that yet. Now, it may be that a new manager comes in this summer anyway and brings in his new goalkeeper, because that's the way managers work, and goalkeeper is obviously such an important position. But I would like to think that if we give Barkas a run in the team, with the pressure off a little between now and the end of the season, to a certain extent, of course there's always pressure at Celtic, hopefully he can show why he's a good goalkeeper. He is a good goalkeeper. He was Greek number one, he was the best goalkeeper in Greece for a number of years, he's played in the Champions League, he's won trophies, he is a good goalkeeper, we just need to see it. So, long story cut short, or long answer cut short, Barkas for me. Would really like to know your thoughts on Celtic's current commercial association with cheap cider and vodka brands and the club's open endorsement of gambling firms. Right, this is a very tough question, and I'm not just saying that as a usual, Michael Gove, Matt Hancock type thing they say at all the press conferences. It genuinely is a tough question for me to answer. I think it would be better answered, more sufficiently answered by someone with real knowledge in this kind of stuff. But my own views, seeing as you're asking for them, and I know you've messaged me a few times, Greg, to ask me for this, so I appreciate you getting in touch. I would rather Celtic didn't have sponsors of gambling and alcohol, especially gambling. I think gambling for me is the next horror story to rear its head over the next few years. There are of course already horror stories with people making wrong decisions. I've had experience of that in my own personal life. It's how easily it can be to become hooked by gambling, and I don't think having a family club like Celtic associated with bookies is a great move. Of course, Scottish football and football as a whole has a real obsession with bookmakers and casinos at the moment. Why? Because they're the ones who sadly have the money, and very sadly that money is is made up a lot of people who have real addictions to this. The drinking I don't have quite as much of a problem with, but that's only personal experience. I understand that the drink is ruined and will continue to ruin lots of lives as well. So in an ideal world, I think Celtic would be sponsored by the Celtic Foundation or a more charitable route or something like that. Sadly, I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see football and the government take a leading role in getting gambling and alcohol to a lesser extent out of the game.